remember well that old cabin in the holler where in childhood I used to play. No brass on the door, no rugs on the floor, but love came to visit every day. Remember one springtime, Mama planted a garden, and in the center she placed a rose. Standing today, time has burned it away, but my mama's rose is still blue. My mama's roses still bloom on the hillside where the old home place used to stand. They're a constant reminder that Mama still lives with Jesus in that heavenly home. Lord, I can remember that old country graveyard where they laid my mama away. The sweet smell of clover, I'll never get over the words that the preacher had to say. Oh, children, don't be grieving, 'cause your mama ain't leaving. She's just taking a well-deserved rest. For the grave has no victory when you're sleeping in Jesus, and your mama's enjoying heaven's best. My mama's roses still grow on the hillside where the old home place used to stand. They're a constant reminder that Mama still lives with Jesus in that heavenly land. They're a constant reminder that Mama still lives with Jesus in that heavenly land. Amen. Praise our moms.
Well, again, this is Mother's Day, and I was looking at, and we're going to be in 1 Samuel chapter 1 in a few minutes, but I was looking at some of the famous moms of the Bible and what they accomplished and the example that they set. And one of the earliest ones was a woman named Jochebed. She was the mother of Aaron, Miriam, and Moses. Now, if there was ever a mom whose life would have made a great movie, it would be Jochebed. You just have to give it up for her and the midwives who, in their act of disobedience against Pharaoh, allowed Moses to be born. Pharaoh had commanded that all the children that were being delivered by the Egyptian midwives to Jewish women be killed. And the midwives, when asked by the Pharaoh why they were not killing the baby boys as they were commanded, they replied that the Hebrew women were too vigorous and they delivered their own babies before they could get there. How'd you like to deliver your own baby? That's something now. You got to be vigorous, that's all I can say. I've had a kidney stone, so I know what labor feels like. So baby Moses was born but he had to be sent down the river literally in a little basket while his sister was serving as a lookout, only to be pulled out of the water by Pharaoh's daughter herself, who secured the services of Moses' biological mother to be his nanny. Tell me that God does not have a sense of humor. Jochebed sacrificed her personal safety and even her emotions, kept her emotions in check in order to see to it that her son's life was saved and that he had a chance to grow up. She did this at such great risk, but that's how a mom works. Moses' mom showed that determination and ingenuity of a desperate mother can result in surprising circumstances, and he wound up delivering his people, and what a great role model. Then I think about Mary, the mother of Jesus. An angel appeared to Mary, who was a young teenage girl at the time, and he told her that she would become pregnant and have a child that would deliver his people. And he told her that she was highly favored by God. But the favored girl had to have some concerns because an unwed pregnancy in those days was a lot different. You could get stoned for that. And I'm sure she was relieved to find that the angel had given her soon-to-be husband, Joseph, the same message. And yes, she was going to give birth to the divine gift of heaven. But as any mother knows, all those gifts come with a lot of work attached to it. She still had to change his diapers, soothe him as he teethed, teach him to walk and clean up his skinned knees. She had to cook his meal and wash his clothes and do all the things that mom do for their children. And it's interesting that we see where Mary pops up in the Gospels. For example, at the temple, she had to send out an APB for her son. She couldn't find him. They'd gone and left, and they thought he was in the group of people, and he was still at the temple. And when she came back and said, "Why did you do this? Why did you stay here?" He said, "I must be about my Father's business." And so it was a surprise to see how she handled it so quietly and so privately. Another favorite moment, or a mother moment of Mary's, was when she was at the wedding in Cana. As Jesus does the miracle and turned the water into wine, I would have loved to have been there to see the looks pass between her and her son that night, because she knew who he was and what he was capable of doing, and no one else did. And then Mary at the crucifixion of Jesus. The disciples, they scattered, and the followers may be in hiding, but a mother stands there while the rest of the world walks away. Any of y'all that have a good mom know that's true. In fact, Mary is a rich tapestry of real motherhood. A lot of excitement followed by years of work and moments of intense pain, but through it all, mothers are there. Now in 1 Samuel, we see the story, a very unique story of a woman by the name of Hannah. It says here in chapter 1, verse 1 of 1 Samuel, now there was a certain man, I'll have to quit being vain and put my glasses on, I'm sorry. Ramtha-Imzaphan of Mount Ephraim, and his name was Elkanah, the son of Jeroam, the son of Elihu, the son of Tohu, the son of Zeph, an Ephrathite. And he had two wives. The name of one was Hannah, and the other one was Peninnah. And Peninnah had children, but Hannah had no children. And this man went up out of his city yearly to worship and to sacrifice unto the Lord of hosts in Shiloh. And the two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, the priests of the Lord, were there. And when the time that Elkanah offered, he gave to Peninnah his wife and to all her sons and her daughters portion. But to Hannah he gave a worthy portion, for he loved Hannah, but the Lord had shut up her womb. And her adversary provoked her to make her fret because the Lord had shut up her womb. The other wife made fun of her. And as he did so year by year, when she went up to the house of the Lord, she provoked her. Therefore she wept and did not eat. Then said Elkanah, her husband, Hannah, why are you weeping, and why don't you eat? Why is your heart grieved? Am not I better to thee than 10 sons? He just didn't understand, did he? And so Hannah rose up after they had eaten in Shiloh and after they had drunk. And now Eli the priest sat upon a seat by a post in the temple of the Lord. Now listen to this. And she was in bitterness of soul. And she prayed to the Lord, and she wept sore. And she vowed a vow, and listen to this, what this mother said to the Lord. O Lord of hosts, if you will look on the affliction of your handmaid, and remember me, and forget not your handmaid, but give unto me a man-child, I will give him unto the Lord all the days of his life, and there shall no razor come upon his head. She said, I'll dedicate him to you. I'll give him to you if you will let me have a son, and I will even make him a Nazarite. In other words, he never cut his hair or shaved his beard, ever. A Nazarite did that. That was a vow that they took. It was setting themselves aside for the Lord. And all you other folks thought we were just nothing but a bunch of hippies, didn't you? Now, we're Nazarites. All of us in here that's got long hair. Okay. Now listen to what happened here. It came to pass as she continued praying before the Lord. Now this mother is praying at the altar, and she's pouring her heart out. And the priest, who ought to have been praying for her, was watching her in judgment. And it said, while she was praying before the Lord, Eli noticed her mouth. Now Hannah, when she spoke in her heart, and only her lips moved, but her voice was not heard, and therefore Eli thought she was drunk. Why, he must have been the pastor of Solid Rock Synagogue. Y'all ain't that bad, not quite. I'm just playing. And instead of asking her what was wrong, instead of praying for her, he goes up to her and said, how long will you be drunk? Put away your wine from yourself. He told her to quit drinking. She was upset. She was praying to God and pouring out her heart. And instead of being a prayer warrior like we got here, he walked up to her and said, how long are you going to be drunk? You need to put that wine away. How awful. And Hannah said, no, my Lord, I am a woman of sorrowful spirit. I have drunk neither wine nor strong drink, but have poured out my soul before the Lord. Don't count me for a daughter of Belial. That means worthless. For out of the abundance of my complaint and grief have I spoken. And then Eli, of course, changed the tune, and he answered and said, go in peace, and the God of Israel grant you your petition that you have asked of him. And we find out that she did. That God granted, that she did become pregnant. God granted her wish. And in verse 24, it said, when she had weaned him, she took him with her to the temple with 3 bullocks and 1 ephah of flour and a bottle of wine, and brought him unto the house of the Lord in Shiloh. And the child was very young. And they slew a bullock and brought the child to Eli, and said, O Lord, as my soul liveth, my Lord, I'm the woman that stood by thee right here praying unto the Lord. And for this child I prayed, and the Lord had given me my petition which I asked of him. And so therefore also I have lent him to the Lord. As long as he liveth, he shall be lent to the Lord. And he worshiped the Lord there. Have you ever thought of dedicating your children to the Lord? That's what we do a lot of times with newborns and so forth. And we have services ever so often. If you want your child to have a chance in this life, then you need to raise your child in the house of the Lord. You need to teach your child about the Lord, and you need to dedicate your child to the Lord. And so finally, and at what time when that child gets older and they have an understanding of things, they will choose the Lord rather than the world, chances are. But it's up to mom and it's up to dad to do that. We see that God answered Hannah's prayer. And she conceived Samuel, and she filled her vow to the Lord, and Samuel was taken to the temple and was entrusted to the priest, and because of her obedience, Samuel became the most famous prophet in Israel's history. You want your child to be great? Then you give your child to the Lord. That's what will make them great. I think about my mother. She passed away 3 years ago in February. And some days it feels like it was yesterday. Something about mamas that you don't forget. Mine left an indelible mark on my life. I was sitting and thinking of some of the stuff she said. And some of it made sense to me back then, and some of it didn't until I got grown. And she always told me when I'd go out when I was driving, make sure you wear clean underwear unless you're in an accident. I've been in the emergency room before, and now I get it. And another thing that was, I think it was a local phrase. She would go, look at that dirt on the back of your neck. You could grow a salad patch on it. I don't believe that, but it did get dirty. And then she would tell me, you're going to taught me all about stamina. You're going to sit there till all that spinach is gone. I used to laugh that her daddy would look at my room and tell me, looked like either a tornado went through it, or my favorite one, they'd tell me that my room looked like an outhouse over a gully. So I brought him up to the house one time and showed him Andy's room and said, behold, the gully. Didn't feel so bad. Didn't you always hate to hear your mother say, just wait till you get home? And my favorite, if you don't stop crossing your eyes, they're going to freeze that way. They told me that one day I'd make a living running my mouth, but I don't think they meant this. Taught me how to be an adult. If you don't eat your vegetables, you'll never grow up. And then my favorite, you're just like your daddy. Do you ever had your mom to yell at you and tell you to shut the door and ask you if you were born in a barn? I wanted to say Jesus was, but I was afraid of a backhand if I got that smart alecky. One thing my mother always said, and I used to laugh about it, and she was right. She said, when you get to be my age, you'll understand. Oh, Lord, Mama, I do understand now. And my favorite, one day you'll have kids, and I hope they turn out just like you. I remember one day I went down to my oldest daughter's house. My oldest daughter was the one that used to run me up the walls, act just like me. But I saw her daughter standing her ground in the kitchen, and they were going at it. And my daughter was so frustrated, and she looked at me, she said, help me, Daddy. And I looked at her, started laughing, and I said, let me quote Jesus to you. Fill ye up then the measure of your fathers. And I left her in the kitchen to argue with my granddaughter. Oh, that was ugly. I shouldn't have done that. But I've been waiting for that for 30 years. Actually, what my mother really taught me, and this is the truth, is she told me that one of the greatest gifts that you can give your child is a conscience. She said there's nothing like a good old Jewish mother guilt trip when one of your kids does wrong. Amen, brother. You know what that is, don't you? You let them know that it was wrong and that it was terrible, and let them feel bad about it. Give your child a conscience so they'll have one when they grow up. She also told me you will never stop being a parent. I can't believe that my youngest son is 30 years old. Harry Shelton said you couldn't be a day over 20, by the way, Andy. He just made sure of that, told me to tell you that. Absolutely. It never slows down. But you will always be a parent. You will always love that child if you're the right kind of parent, and especially a mom. Especially a mom. I always remembered when I was in my late teens and I'd be coming in the house in the middle of the night, and there was Mama sitting in the living room waiting, and I'd always argue with her. Why are you up? Why ain't you in bed? Well, you just don't understand, son. You don't know what it's like being a parent. And I would say, well, you know what? When I have my own kids, I will never do that. I even stuck my chest out and said that to her. And there were each time when one of my children was born, I had to go apologize to her. You know, even when my children they're all grown now, I still worry about them. I still want, if they go out of town, I want to make sure I know where they are and if they're okay. You'll never understand till you have kids of your own. Boy, she told it like it was. My mother led me to the Lord back in 1969. I asked her what it was all about, and she got out her Bible and sat me on the edge of the bed and explained to me about salvation and prayed with me. If it hadn't have been for a godly mother, I really do not know where I would be, and if I do, I wouldn't tell you. She wasn't one of those meek, mild, mousy little women like some of these preachers tell y'all you ought to be. Don't let them do that to you. That's not what the Bible says. The Bible doesn't denigrate women at all, in spite of what some preachers like to twist around and say. It doesn't do that at all. It lifts them up on a pedestal, and it gives them great responsibility. And my mother was always one of those that was outspoken. Duh. She was responsible for my daddy getting saved, and I'll tell you how it worked. Right after they got married, Daddy'd been going to church with her all the time. So right after they settled in the house, he said, well, if you think I'm going to go to church every Sunday with you now you got another thing coming. And rather than her going, well, you know, that's okay. This is what Mama said. If you want to sit down on that sofa and go to hell, you go right ahead, but I'm going to church. And he got to thinking about that, and Daddy's real practical. And he decided he didn't want to go to hell, so he got up and went with her and went down the aisle and got saved that Sunday. That's how that works. That's how it works, folks. Make your stand for the Lord as a mom and even as a wife. You do that. That's the right thing to do. She always looked out for me and my sister first, always. She said her children always came first. She went with us to church, made it an absolute priority. And she always told me that she loved me every time we talked. She always did, and that was usually every day. She gave me an example one time when I was a little kid on how you define a mother. She told the story of a little kid sitting in a classroom. And she said the teacher asked the little boy, said, say for instance your mother has 6 oranges. How is she going to divide it equally between the two of you? And he said, oh, I will get 4 and she will get 2. The teacher said, you don't know your math. And the kid said, no, you don't know my mama. That's a mother. Mothers sacrifice. They give and they give and they give. And those are the ones that should be praised. When their children make it and turn out right and turn out to love the Lord, that is the greatest thing that anybody could do. Let me say this, the greatest calling is not the dude that stands behind this pulpit, but the hand that rocks the cradle. That's the truth. That's the truth. Because a mother can make or break. She has such incredible responsibility. Matter of fact, God gave her amazing responsibility and authority to raise her children and to raise them right. That was all through God's law. He put women on a pedestal. He put mothers on a pedestal. There is nothing at all that can compare to a mama that loves the Lord. There is nothing that can compare. That's the highest calling in the world. To be a mom, a godly mom, and to raise children to be godly and understand who Jesus is and all. That's the most amazing thing in the world. And so as Proverbs 31 says, we rise and we call you blessed this morning. Blessed are these wonderful mothers that love the Lord. There is nothing prettier, nothing more beautiful than a godly woman. I personally think there's nothing more attractive than that. Beauty is skin deep. And I know that ugly goes to the bone. I know that. But there's nothing more beautiful than a woman, regardless of her age and what she looks like. Nothing more beautiful than a woman that loves Jesus. You'll never be able to top that. Shall we bow our heads to pray? Pastor Glenn, can I get you to play a song of invitation for us this morning when we have it, if you would? I appreciate that so much. Maybe this morning